Okay. We'll be precise and wait till the clock strikes noon, because that sounds cool. Okay. Hello and welcome, everybody, to our first call of our breathwork and meditation challenge. So I'll request that for now, everybody that is joined is muted out, and as you come in, will be muted out. So you could just leave it that way, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. And if you have any questions along the way, if you want to put them in the chat, then you can do so, and I'll check those during our Q&A time. So happy Wednesday, and this is our first gathering of 4 gatherings on Wednesdays. And should it go well, maybe we should keep it up, because I really love having a regular anchor rhythm. And I think that it would be a good way to support everyone to keep going, right? Because that's sort of one of the mantras I'm on, or one of the affirmations, because when it comes to things like establishing a practice of breathwork and meditation, we are going to have to come back to it again and again and again, because life, as I say in the beginning of the course, is not designed for our meditative focus. It has been designed by distraction. And what I mean when I say that is that, even these devices that we're using now to communicate, they, just like me and just like you and just like everything, have their good side and their bad side. And your attention is what everyone is after, and it's going to take quite a lot of effort on your part to maintain a sense of inner freedom and mental freedom, and know that what you're wanting is what you really want, and not just what your Instagram ads are telling you to want. So that's why I do my best to use these channels to get your attention and then give it back to you. So that's really what these calls are about. They're about learning and staying inspired, but also having a set point each week that calls you back to yourself. That helps you remember what you meant to do, because, right, the distraction will happen. That's not the most important part. It's the habitual part. It's the part that we've on some level come to know about ourselves, and that we're distracted. But the important part, and the part that we're training, is the part of you that comes back. There's a fascinating thing that we start to experience when devoted to meditative practice for a long period of time. And all that time begs the question, if I didn't decide to get distracted, if I didn't say, I will now be distracted, I will now let my mind wander to that one time when I was mistreated in the 6th grade, or the time when my lover betrayed me, my mind going back to there, or projections into the future of all the greatness that surely is to be because of this meditative practice that we're establishing. If we didn't decide to get distracted either about the future or the past, or then did we decide to come back? Or what decides to bring us back? And so that repetition of getting distracted and coming back, could say, is the essence of having a practice, something that you are devoted to returning your attention to, because it's who you are on the deepest level, and it's what you mean to do. You mean to move from a place inside of you that's connected to insight and intuition, and that is stable and solid in your belonging and sense of connection here on earth. So although the practices that we have done so far and will continue doing aren't necessarily complex, they're profound in their simplicity, because as you train the breath in this way, you can train yourself to breathe in this way more often in your life than just when you're practicing your formal meditation practice. So life has been designed for your distraction, and we are taking back our attention, and we're going to really do it this time. We're not just going to talk about it. We're not going to read about it. We're doing it. And you will get a little bit of repetition throughout the course, because especially when it comes to ego blasting things like a breathwork and a meditation practice, it's often that really beautiful, profound thing that we just heard that touched our hearts gets instantly forgotten. And so there's a need for repetition because of the way that things go and the way that our minds work. So if you hear something a few times, it's because I hope it sticks. So the most important thing is that you come back. And today we'll be going over some options for meditative seats, because if you have done your session 1 of the training, you heard me say, this is not about meditating on pain. There is no particular, there's nothing particularly heroic about this pose. If you're sitting in this pose, complaining and moaning internally about being in this pose and feeling uncomfortable. So there are lots of alternatives that you can use, and hopefully today you'll be able to find an option that makes you feel comfortable. So if there's anything that you've discovered so far from your practice that you're having trouble with, particular pains, you can put those in the chat and I'll try to address those at the end. These postures are a variety of levels, because again, as I say, there's nothing particularly heroic about sitting on the floor. The most important thing is that your posture is stable and comfortable, both for your breath work and for your meditation. So in the course, I talk you through these meditative seats, but I would like to show you them because we've been communicating auditorily. So this is a visual opportunity to see those poses that I'm talking about in the course itself. So this one is my go-to and favorite, and it's 2 or 3 blankets stacked. I use one that's a little bit larger so that the tops of my feet and ankles can go across this front part. Let me see if I can do better. Across this top part, because that tends to be a place where people get uncomfortable, tops of the feet and ankles. Sits bones go on this second blanket, and then tailbone, if you can go on this third, either at the center or in the corner. So 2 sits bones and a tailbone, and that really creates this stable foundation for your pelvis, because we have to start at the bottom to create a foundation that doesn't create head and neck pain, because oftentimes the pain will manifest lower or higher in the neck and shoulders, but the foundation of that is because the way our posture is a bit further down. So if you feel comfortable on the ground, if it doesn't hurt your ankles, your knees, your hips, your back, or if it does for a little bit, but you'd like to work up towards being able to spend more time on the floor, you could begin your meditation on the floor and then move your way to one of these other options that I'll give with a chair. If you don't have all these blankets and you want to sit on the floor, you could also just use a block. But again, it's really important that sometimes I'll use a block with a blanket covered over it so I can still get the support on the tops of the ankles. It's really important that your hips are lifted up above your knees. your hips are lifted up above your knees. Something that I often see and say, like, what we could call meditation propaganda, I guess, is people in meditative pose where they're like this. I can tell you that is a killer on the hips and a killer on the ankles, and that this is a meditation on pain because of what I know about biomechanics. So if this is what your posture looks like, stop and come into one of these other two options. So we'll start with, this is a chair that is used for yoga classes mostly, but it's really just a folding chair. Underestimated the zoom lens. Sorry about this, but better. All right, so meditative chair. So you can just put a blanket over it like I have here. And if something over the back would make it more comfortable, you can do that also. So ideally you wouldn't be leaning back. So from a side view, you can see I'm towards the front of the chair and my ankles are directly underneath my knee. It's cutting off my head, but I'll come down here when I'm talking. My ankle is right underneath my knee, and my knee is slightly down from my hips. So for me, I could fold this over one more time so that it lifts my hips even a little bit higher, and my hip bone and my thigh bone, that there's a slight downward slope. So making sure that your chair is high enough so that your feet are flat on the floor, so that then you could maintain a neutral spine here. And as the course goes on, we'll get into more and more information about what exactly neutral spine is and the details of some of the actions that you're taking inside of your meditative pose to bring alignment. But for now, just getting this general setup in place and your head on top of your shoulders. Mine's cut off, but it is on top of my shoulders. Will help a lot. So if any lower back pain or any of that is something you have going on, then surrender to the chair and things will feel a lot more easy. All right, if even sitting in the chair is like, meh, I'd rather not do it than sit in that chair. All right, let's find another option that feels more comfortable. Again, as I say in the training, if you're not comfortable, then you're not going to be inclined towards presence. And what we're trying to cultivate is presence and even a desire to be present. So option 3 is to find your favorite chair or your favorite cozy spot and kind of add some additional supports so that you're not sinking into it. So there's not like a total passivity to the pose. There is a little bit of action and a really solid foundation. So this is a sandbag, but any sort of thicker eye pillow or even a thicker throw pillow would work for this. Placing that down in the lumbar, a rolled up blanket is also another option. So that your lumbar spine is supported. Then this is just a throw pillow that I'm going to turn the other way behind me so that I'm not leaning so far back that my feet can't touch the floor. And if you can, try not to lift your head up so much, but only keep your head lifted slightly. If you need something behind you, you can figure out whatever might work as a support behind your head so that your head is not resting in a forward position. So blanket or another throw pillow there behind your head so that you can rest your head back, or if you can, just keeping the head upright. So again, it's a really important thing that your feet are able to touch the floor. So that can happen in one of two ways. Either you move the back of your seat forward so that then your feet can reach the floor, or you lift the floor. So I'll just use a meditation block as an example here, or a yoga block as an example of something that could bring the floor up a little bit. So again, ideally in this other pose, our hips are above our knees, but in like a lazy boy or on a couch, that's not going to be possible. The most important thing in that case is that your feet are in solid contact with the ground, because that's going to kind of help keep us grounded in a way. And that's part of the effort that we're making, is to keep our focus in our physical sensation and in our physical body. So we have to, again, make that a comfortable place to be. So let me see if anyone had any specific questions. No? Okay. All right, so let's take a moment for a grounding prayer, and then we'll move into our practice. So if anyone has any specific questions about your meditation pose, now would be a good time to raise your hand if you're in the Zoom room, or put the information in the chat. And I'm really happy to make sure that you are stable and comfortable, because that's the thing we're doing. So I hope by now that all of you have had a chance to create your meditation thrones. I showed you mine. I actually have a space that's right up by where I sleep, so that there's as little chance as possible that distraction will set in from the time I wake up to the time that I'd like to spend just a few brief minutes on my meditation, in my meditation space, to start the day in that way. Yes. Okay. So low back pain and a degenerative disc may mean that anytime that you're in an upright position, there may be pain. So this option where you're, in that place where you found that you can get comfortable, depending on the degree of degeneration. The other thing would be is finding a restorative yoga pose that feels really comfortable and that you can do your meditation in. But anything where the back is supported, and you can kind of take any pressure off of that, would be what I would recommend. So this option where you bring the floor up under. Oh, okay. Yeah. Hero's pose. I made the joke that sitting on the floor isn't, there's nothing heroic about it, but this is called Vajrasana, and it's called Hero's pose. So sitting with the knees bent and on the tops of the ankles, if this is available to you, is also a great posture for both breathwork and meditation. If you're almost there, not quite able to rest the tops of the ankles down without pain, or have the knees resting on the ground, you can use a block to just slightly lift the hips and allow the weight of your body to go onto the block. Sometimes it's more comfortable on a lower side. So another option for that, say that you're doing your meditation after your workout at the gym, would be to use a foam roller for Vajrasana. So the main effort of everything that we're doing is so that your pelvis and your rib cage and your head can be in alignment, and your organs of action at the legs and at the low body and at the hands and at the face can all be moving inwards. So there's this inward movement of the action of the poses, so that it invites an inward movement of the mind. You can also use the foam roller as the hip lift for your cross-leg position as well. And there's more advanced poses, you may have seen, like bound full lotus and those sorts of things. If you feel like you want to know those poses, and you feel like that's in your wheelhouse, that you're able to sit in this way for a good long while without pain, then awesome. Schedule a one-on-one and I would love to show them to you. But although they're kind of the standard of what is known in Hatha Yoga as the key poses, for us that have been sitting in chairs most of our life, it's a big ask to put ourselves in those poses for long periods of time until there's been some significant training of the joints to be able to hold those postures. Okay. All right, that looks like all the questions. I appreciate those. And it could be that variety is your friend here. So I could tell a story about this particular pose, which is my main go-to, left leg in and right leg on top. I meditated like this for years and years, and then just, gave this one a try after realizing that it was causing some problems on my opposite side because of the consistent single posture that I was in. So variety in your posture, switching legs, and not necessarily, if you can, in the middle of the meditation. If you're in pain ever in the meditation, go ahead and change your posture. But if you can, find one posture that invites you into stillness that you can stay in for the duration of the meditation. All right, so far this week, you guys have hopefully been able to listen to the training, the 1 hour long session where I go into the details of the anatomy of breath and the anatomy of pranayama and the ways that we'll start to talk about breath and pranayama. And then 2 practices where we're really focusing on the exhale and lengthening the exhale and cultivating this softness of breath. But along with that softness is a fullness, really using the full space and the capacity that we have for breath. So if you've been doing your practice and you've noticed anything, have any questions or even any inspiration for the other practitioners as far as what you're experiencing from the practices, please be welcome to share those in the chat. I would love to hear how it's going. So we're cultivating a gentle attention on the process of breathing daily, every day in these formal practices. And then ideally that's starting to leak out into the rest of your life, and you're starting to notice and be with your breath at other times. So when you notice anxiety coming up, moving to a deep breath in and down that fills the body, and a lengthened exhale can be a really great way to support yourself in any given stressful moment. Right? So we're doing this training so that we can become stronger than our life, and that we can have the ability to insert a pause before we react to whatever stimulus might be in front of us, causing us to react, and rather take a breath and cultivate the ability to respond from a place of presence. So far, you may have noticed some habituated patterns in your breath. Mostly the only thing to do with these is try not to obsess too much. Try not to worry, is it this or what's this? What does this say about me? And what's wrong with this? If that's happening for you, don't worry, that's normal. Just keep breathing in the way that I'm directing you to. And over the course of time, your breath pattern will correct itself. Just moving your attention away from obsessive thinking or worry back to this particular pattern of breath and groove in this new way of breathing. So you may notice that you start to breathe in different ways, or that your breath pattern changes. If we're not paying attention, we can have an unconscious breath pattern that fills in the chest, which when there's a time to breathe in that way, when we want to uplift our energy, and we'll even do that today because we're at the midday, so it's a great time to do an uplifting practice. But the practice that we're doing in the training is to start first with a calming, soothing breath. Okay, so let's move into our practice for today. I'd like to start practice with a prayer. So this practice will be about 7-8 minutes, and then I'll conclude the practice. If you'd like to stay in your meditative space, feel free to. I'll answer questions and everything from anybody who has them, and I'll be available to chat individually if you want to stay on the call. If you want to stay on the call and just continue to meditate, please be welcome to do that also. If you want to click out of the call and keep meditating, also be welcome to do that. So this is to just set you up for however long of a meditation you'd like to have this afternoon. So pick one of these meditative postures that we've gone over today and get really comfortable. So your hands can be relaxed on your thighs. You can touch your first finger to your thumb. You can hold them on your lap. Wherever there's a relaxed, comfortable position for the elbows and that you feel supported with where your hands are, that there's not causing extra strain in the back. And then focus your eyes first. So either focusing the eyes on a single point. I'd recommend focusing them not directly at the screen. So we'll take a moment to, with the eyes open, focus the eyes. So we can bring ourselves into a meditative state just by bringing ourselves back to the senses in the body. Starting with the eyes is a good one. Focusing the eyes. And then as your eyes are focused, also allow your vision to be wide. So spread your sight all the way to the periphery that you could see. So see with a wide vision. Take the long view and the wide view, and allow your sense of sight to be open. And then notice what breath pattern you're breathing naturally without any direction. Have you become established in the low to high breath that fills in the back body, has a smooth, easy transition? Is that yours now? That's my goal, that each one of these practices are something that we groove in and then they become yours. And you do them without guidance. They're sort of installed into your system. So breathing in that way now. Next, I'll invite you to change that pattern. So rather than filling belly first, fill into the upper back and shoulders first. So rather than the chest filling, there's a direction of the breath touching the chest and moving backwards, and then moving down into the side ribs and then down into the abdomen. Still continuing with a smooth transition and a passive exhale. So breath feels high to low, and simply noticing the effects of this breath pattern. We're not adding extra emphasis to the exhale as we did in the training program this week, but allowing the exhale to happen as passively as you can, and making it complete. Good. And then we'll add a soft pause after inhale. So fill from the upper back and shoulders to the side ribs and the low belly last, and then pause full of breath for maybe a beat or two, and then allow the exhale to happen. So with this suspension of breath after inhale, see if you can have the pause be really gentle, not jerky, and also the release be really gentle, not sort of exasperated or any struggle or jerks to it. Try to keep that transition to the starting and stopping of the transitions of the suspension of breath to be as smooth as you can. Do this for 5 more rounds of breath, suspending the inhale, pause. See if you can have the count of that beat be the heartbeat, or any pulse or sensation that you feel from the inside. Good. After your next exhale, release the pause, but continue the high to low breath pattern. So we'll conclude our guided practice together today with my prayer for each of you as you go through this challenge that I created. But really, it's about becoming established in your most inner core and having practices and techniques that return you to that space deep within. May we be protected. May we be nourished. May, through nourishing and protecting ourselves, may we see what we really are, light. With that light, may we be of service to one another and grow strong together. May we find the grace of forgiveness with ease. Om, peace, peace, peace. However you choose to go right now, go with this soft awareness on the process of breathing. If anyone has any questions or would like to pop on and say hello, I'd love to say hello. We'll be meeting again this time next week. So the new content will come out tomorrow. So your practice for phase 2. I know in the program I say month, but when I originally did this program, it was a 4-phase program over 4 months. We've condensed it down to 4 weeks, and I've done that because I want you to have an experience of this container together, and then have the ability to return to whichever practice you found to be most appropriate for where you're at in both your ability to commit and your capacity for breath and presence. So once we are finished with our time together, you'll get to keep the content. And so if you choose, you could kind of turn it into a 4-month program and revisit the phases with a little bit longer time with each practice to get established in each one and grow in that way. Oh, okay. Patty's off to meditate. All right. Hey, River. Hey, Claire. Hey, Juju. Good to see you. Hey, Faith. Is it Ray or Rhea?
It's Ray.
Ray. Hi.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. How are things going?
Okay, so they're going really well. I told you the other day that I felt like it's been really helpful. And I did have a question.
Yeah, great.
So you mentioned how when you develop this breathing practice, you can take a pause and potentially not do the shit you always do, is what you say. And so I can see how that helps with being triggered and potentially anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if you could give some examples of other ways you can potentially change a direction by pausing,
Mm-hmm.
or what is actually happening when you do that.
Sure. So something that I've noticed in those moments is that I'm actually not breathing at all. I'm actually totally constricted around the breath. And so simply that action of turning towards it and breathing again has all sorts of like physiological benefits of like breathing, right? That it's like this thing we have to do for oxygen and to sustain life. It's the first thing. You can not eat for a long time and you'll make it just fine, but you can't not breathe.
Yes.
And so when we're in that state and already panicked or, like you said, triggered or activated, we're existing in our physical pattern in the past, where as in that moment it's as though whatever is happening in that moment isn't really what's happening. It's actually all the things that have happened and the habituated response that we have from all of those things that have happened to us. And those responses live in our body. And our memory from our body is deep. It can go back to birth and pre-birth that our bodies remember. And so the breath and the body are pathways back to presence. They're how we come back to here. So orienting to the senses in that given moment can really help to make the pause more possible. It can be anything. It can be noticing the color red. It can be any sort of sensory input that you can have. It can be something, we all sort of develop these different, maybe they could be thought of as like little tics in a way of things that we develop to do that for ourselves, to bring ourselves back to presence, whether it's like, gripping our hands or different things that we start to do so that we can feel ourselves again. Because what's happening when we're in that past experience is we're overwhelmed and we want to leave that feeling. So we're not feeling what's happening in our body and we're not feeling what's happening in the situation. So we're reacting as though we need to protect ourselves from our maximum fight or flight in situations that, might not require that. They might require just you stating a boundary firmly, right? So you feel violated by someone over crossing your boundaries, and you respond in that way where it was traumatic, like it was that traumatic event. So through the breath and breath practice, you're starting to build pathways to presence. And so like I say in the training program, you're not going to be able to have that available in the moment where you're triggered. I'm still trying to find a word I like to use for that. So in that moment that you're activated, you're not going to have the pathways to presence available if you haven't ever thought of the breath or practiced the breath. In the same way that I use the example of basketball, you're not going to hit the 3-pointer at the end of the game if it's the first time you've taken the shot. It's got to be so well grooved in that it happens without thought. And so our formal practice is that time, and then adding it in as much as possible when you're having like micro activated moments. So small triggers that don't totally overwhelm your system is another way that you can sort of start to I'm spacing on the word now, but exposure therapy, like recognize, I'm gripped around the breath. I'm feeling that way again. And a lot of times we have the space, say, for example, with our therapist in therapy, to process the things that have happened to us and make them conscious. But then it's a whole nother matter to reorient with our body to that we're safe now. So this process of cultivating a consistent practice is reminding yourself again today, you're not in that situation, you're safe now. And then through having that pathway that returns you to the breath again and again, you're acting on that pathway, you're deepening the groove. And sometimes it's a fact that the deeper, the more intense the emotional charge of a situation, the deeper the groove gets made. That's why we're so quick to remember all the ways we've been hurt and to react from that way. Well, the same is true when you finally do it differently. And there will not be a crowd around to cheer for you or anyone who even notices but you. But that moment where you take the new action and you use the breath in the heat of the moment to do something differently, please feel it completely and fully and allow yourself to feel it as like a big fucking deal because it is a big deal. And if you don't feel it as a big deal, you won't get that added support of the intensity of the emotion that you felt and redirected to charge you for the positive, to kind of build a database of memories of you doing it differently than maybe the way that got you into a particular kind of trouble.
Yes, that's very helpful. I think that just the little extra explanation with the whole just patterns and everything is super helpful. Yeah. So awesome. The other question on the same subject, is this something you can apply to small decisions? Because right now I've been applying it to anxiousness and it's been really helpful. I was just curious because a lot of times I don't know, decisions can be overwhelming. And I was just wondering if this is also something you can apply in the mundane things of life.
Yeah, I find that especially when I have a lot to decide on or I'm struggling with indecision, it's
I struggle with focus a lot.
With focus. So having the set period and using some outside supports, outside stimulus to help bring more focus to just a small amount of time. So
yes.
Say, for example, you're going to just have 1 minute where what you're doing, you're setting a timer on your phone. You have 1 minute. Well, all you're doing is consciously hearing silence.
Mm-hmm.
And if consciously hearing silence doesn't feel like enough, you could just touch one finger to the next finger, to the next finger, to the next finger, and back, and just do only that for 1 minute. And that spaciousness, and that way you're not trying to break down the problem, you're not trying to solve the problem, and then thinking about the 15 other factors and your mind kind of going in all directions, but nowhere. You're just having a single pointed focus that's oriented in the senses. And this allows your body to digest all of the emotions, because this is the place where we return to, and this is the place that is going to integrate the schism, right, between our past experience and our current experience. It's going to digest the emotions that might be overblown and overwhelmed and sort of spinning and snowballing if we have a traumatic history. So just this moment, and it seems like nothing. And maybe if you then come out of that 1 minute and write down, just stream of conscious, write down without controlling from how you should be thinking about the problem. Just write down how you're thinking about the problem, because the other thing that's going to help is getting to this level of story that you have about what's going on. So what is making this decision so hard? What's making taking action difficult for you, and what's the story that you have with that? So taking the moment to just orient to the senses and the breath, and then writing down what comes up, what arises from a deeper place, the inner knower, or this witness consciousness that we're trying to cultivate through our practices. Give them a chance to speak. And, just tell all your other inner sisters in there to just settle down. You need to speak to to the heart of the matter.
Okay, well, I'll be doing that as a part of a daily practice too, I'm sure. Yes, well, that was all I had.
Awesome.
If anyone else wants to go, I'll mute.
Thanks. Those were great questions. I appreciate it. All right, y'all. Your answers are within. Find them there. And I will see you next week. And if there is questions about where's this going, what's the next steps, all of that stuff, just stay with this practice. And if you are having that experience, schedule a one-on-one. So as a part of being in the challenge, there's $100 one-on-ones. And so you can book those, and we can talk specifically about you and your body and what's coming up, and really make a practice that is supporting the broader sense of your lifestyle, or more specifically focused on your body if you're having pain. So if you're not able to get into a pain-free meditative pose, that's a sign that some more movement therapies might be helpful. So moving into specific practices that support what may be the source of your physical pain in a bit more of a direct way. So we can really zoom in on with corrective strategies and make a practice that's super potently yours in those one-on-one sessions. Cool. All right, I'm here for it. So comment in the program, say hello in the practice community to me, or if you have any questions on any given section, you can put the question in the comment section in the programming. You can also hit reply to any of the announcements or emails that I send to you, and that comes directly to me, and I'll respond to you in a timely manner. Okay? All right. Love to you all, and keep going. I see you. Hi, Claire. Hi, Mom. Bye, Ray. Okay, we're ending this live stream.